question here asked on lockergnome.net. Will Apple die without Steve Jobs? It's a pretty good question, considering Steve has been having some health issues as of late, and we all kind of know that the direction of Apple is pretty much based on Steve's eye, not his physical eye, but his virtual eye for really good product. So, question is, what's going to happen to Apple when Steve's not around? Now, I'm sure some would say, oh, it's going to go to hell in a handbasket. But you know what? Maybe I'd like to believe that he's imparted enough foresight and insight and desire for inspirational style to his employees that after Steve's no longer with us, Apple would continue. Would it be the same company? Absolutely not. But I would go as far as to say that if Apple does not maintain its course in the way it does things, it will just slip, into obscurity. Now, some would say, oh, well, Apple's dead anyway. Windows this and Android that. You know what? I don't know if Apple's ever sought to be number one. Not that it would, hate, that position. But if you look at even the amount of money that's generated from handsets, this is how much money Apple makes. See, I can't. My hand doesn't even fit in the video. That's how much money Apple makes from the iPhone because of the markup. You know how much money those Android handset manufacturers make? This much. So yeah, Android as an operating system, may be number one. But since when were leaders number one? Number one is relative. And for me, it's about the best possible device and experience as a consumer. And I, as someone who didn't like Apple just a few years ago, have made a pretty big shift in the way that I've seen Apple move. Just as Apple's made this shift. It's about quality and that experience and elegance. And that's something that just isn't rivaled by any other company. No other company has elegance. Every other company is just a kludge. And I'm saying that with all respect. It's just every company seems to lack style, or if there's any bit of style, it's just curbed by problems. Apple controls everything that they have inside their ecosystem, and that is what makes Apple Apple. They have a fine attention to detail. So, the hope would be that Apple has been grooming several executives and leaders within the company to keep that in mind. Apple can succeed past Jobs. Will it succeed? Who's to say? I don't think it will, however, if they take the route that everybody else in the industry has taken. Apple's always been set apart by doing things the way they want to do them, and doing them just, I would say so perfectly the way they do them. It's not to say that the company that you like does them imperfectly, but I honestly, I haven't found any other style or elegance in any other consumer electronics platform anywhere. Google's getting there with Android. Microsoft may get there eventually. But I think Apple, at this point in time, has that, I don't know, it's nice to know that something's going to work, and it's going to look nice. And you know that the experience you have here is going to be a similar experience as you're going to have there, or that your friend's going to have, that friend of a friend is going to have. It's that shared experience that I think is part of what makes Apple Apple. And yes, based on what Steve Jobs perceives as something that's valuable to the marketplace. We'll see. I'm hoping that Apple won't take a turn for the worse, but the only way it could is if it loses sight of doing things at a high quality. And I can't imagine them taking a turn for the worse. I mean, it's only blossomed. The company has blossomed when Steve Jobs, of course, had returned to the company. They tried to do things like everybody else did, and Apple was going nowhere. Now Apple does things on their own terms, and that's where Apple is today. So I would certainly hope for the greater world Apple doesn't go anywhere, even if Steve Jobs does happen to leave us far too early. And you compare that to any other company, and really Apple doesn't have anybody to compare it against. Seriously, can you make a serious comparison between Apple and its products and any other company? Can you? You can't. Apple's the only consumer electronics purveyor of products that controls everything, or certainly as much as possibly can be controlled. Does not have an equal in that capacity. You can't compare it to anybody else. Doing so is making you look stupid, not Apple. Either way, my thoughts are Apple could thrive, but I don't know. It's going to be really, really tough unless a really good number two is in place, and hopefully they don't go number two after Steve Jobs goes.